Hello, friends. Welcome once again to the Perfect Bound Podcast. This is a podcast all about anything and everything comic books and comics related, brought to you by the Panel Jumper and the Comics Dungeon. My name is Ben. With me, as always, is Nicole Lamb.
Hello.
Chris Casso.
Hi.
And Cole Hornaday.
Hello, my fellow sailors on the seas of fate.
Can always count on Cole to make up something.
Well, not always. Hi, Chris. Hi. Hi.
How's everybody doing on this hot evening?
Well, Chris is feeling a little puny.
Puny?
Yeah.
What do you mean he's feeling puny?
This is new to Chris.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were sounding a little puny.
Ah, gotcha.
Okay. Thank you.
Now that we
Yes.
know context.
Yes. Context goes a long way. Sorry. Sorry, Mr. Puny. I didn't mean to besmirch you, Mr. Puny. I apologize, Mr. Puny.
Oh, poking the bear.
Poking the bear?
sleeping bear.
He's wide awake now.
Anyway.
Well,
Yes.
hey, thank you all for coming out to the Central Cinema to see An Odd Duck for Crackle Vision. We had a great time.
We had a marvelous time.
Really sorry to that person that I poked in the eye with a fork, but
Yeah.
don't make fun of my movie. I'm joking. We had a great time. We had an awesome time. I don't know. This is weird. All right.
It was a magical evening.
A magical evening. And please frequent the Central Cinema more. They're a great local place.
They are.
Let's talk about cartoons. Because, and I'll tell you why I want to talk about this. So, as we all know, The Killing Joke is coming out in animated form. And one of the biggest complaints that I've heard from people after why is that it is done in the art style of Batman the Animated Series, and it doesn't look like the Brian Bolland art from the book.
Right.
And not coincidentally, but because of this, somebody on the internet went through and recreated some scenes from the trailer to match Bolland's style a bit more. It looked pretty good. So my question was, are there any cartoon adaptations out there of comic books that adhere very closely to the art style of the book?
Yeah, there's actually quite more than I initially thought. Do you have
The only one I was thinking of was DC New Frontier,
which is
which I'm sure is on. It's
adapts Darwin Cook's
Thank
style
you.
of
Gee
art.
whiz,
Yeah,
yeah.
that one did a
yeah,
pretty
it
good
looks
job.
very much like Darwin Cook's graphic novel series.
The one that leaped first to mind for me was the MTV adaptation of Sam Keith's The Max.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's like panel for panel in exact replica, and it's one of my favorite adaptations, partially because I loved the voice acting on that show too. And so the owner was here earlier with us, and he actually helped me figure out a bunch of others because I forgot about Persepolis.
Yep.
And
Oh, yeah,
the
that's a
movie
good one.
adaptation. And then Batman Year One, the animated one, does kind of look a bit like the David Mazzucchelli artwork. One of my other favorites is The Amazing Screw-On Head, which is an adaptation
that one was
of
great.
Mike Mignola's.
God, I just didn't do any research for this one, and it's like,
Well, actually, they were talking about this when I got here.
Okay,
today.
great. yeah,
And
because those
then-
are all really good examples.
This one's kind of obscure. There was a Kickstarter for it, and Michel Gagne's Saga of Rex, which is a series of short cartoons that are in the Flight anthologies, which are really good anthologies. They did do a Kickstarter to turn that into an animated piece, and it looked spot on. So those were some of the main ones.
Have you seen a lot of these, or
I've seen-
and read the comic as well?
Yes. I haven't seen the final product for Saga of Rex. I don't even know if it got to its final stage yet. Persepolis I haven't seen. Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Persepolis is Our Ladies Book Club. I don't remember.
Excellent.
I don't know what date this is coming out.
You know, I actually recently heard that I don't remember Satrapi pronouncing it as such, but people from Iran actually pronounce it Persepolis. But I wonder if that's not a dialect thing, depending on what part of the country you're from. But yeah, I don't remember Satrapi when I interviewed her years ago pronouncing it that way. But someone else who was from Iran did pronounce it that way. So Persepolis.
Anyway, the reason I ask if you've seen those is because I was wondering if watching the cartoon is akin to reading the book. Like, is it shot for shot? Is it the same like art style? Yes, of course. But is it like seeing the book come alive?
For the Max, it was kind of an interesting one because when I rewatched that recently, it's almost stop motion like, which reminds me of like the 60s, 70s Marvel cartoons that are like very much just like freeze frames that have like Iron Man going like this.
Yeah, the camera moves around the still image, but there'll be aspects about this very still image that are moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot how good that was.
A lot of the others, like I think like Batman Year One, it's stuck pretty close to, but it does its own camera angles, so like stylistically it looks right, but it views differently than the movie in my head. That happens when I'm reading. I think Amazing Screw-On Head added things that weren't in the book. I can't quite remember.
But they're both awesome,
They're both
and it doesn't
awesome.
really matter.
Yeah. A lot of it for me is the voice acting because that's where I'm always interested to see how. Pardon me. Somebody in the studio.
Puny. See?
Puny. Somebody in the studio thought a voice should be versus what I cast in my own head, versus like what is cast in our head because we saw it at a young age. Because Batman, in my head, sounds like the animated Batman. Same with Joker, you know.
So Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill are your voices when you read a Batman comic?
Generally so, yeah. Wolverine kind of has
That weird
voice.
Australian dialect he
You're
had.
thinking from the Pride of the X-Men. Yeah, but in the 90s he had a different voice.
Yeah.
So that's the one that's kind of in my head most of the time. Rogue's voice is the annoying one from the 90s cartoon as well. And Gambit's is very annoying all the time in my head.
It's because they lean heavily on these very cliched dialects.
Yeah.
And she has this southern drawl, and he has this really jaughty Cajun whatever he's trying to do.
The Max I never had a voice going for it, and so the cartoon gifted me with a great voice.
I was a big fan of the Max in the early days, and I think it was within the first couple of issues, you could mail order a cassette radio play of the Max, which I wish I still had. I sold it years ago. I'm sure it's worth bank now. But the guy that did the voice on that radio, and it was an audio adaptation of at least the first 6 issues of the Max. He sounds exactly, as I recall, as the same voice artist that did the animated series.
Crap, talk like this, and grumbly and growly and kind of mucusy.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
You should do the voice, Cole Hornaday.
Sure.
And like every time I read a Transformers comic, Optimus Prime is Optimus Prime.
Yeah.
You know, so some of those get preset at a young age.
Optimus Prime is Eeyore. Because the same voice actor. Anyway,
They should redo a bunch of episodes with pure Eeyore voice.
I'm sorry, Megatron.
Yeah. Oh, that would be great. Yeah.
Never mind.
Speaking of voice, just a quick aside: the guy who does the voice of Winnie the Pooh, whose name I can't remember,
Sterling Holloway.
I saw a YouTube video of him. He was talking about all the voices that he did, and he was going through them, and somebody asked him to do Kaa from the Jungle Book, and he's like, "Don't ask me to do Kaa. He's just an evil Pooh." And if you remember the old Jungle Book comic or cartoon, Kaa is an evil version of Winnie the Pooh.
Trust in me.
You know what's a weird thing that just
trust in me.
that just came across my mind because I see all the Suicide Squad displayed here. The Harley Quinn in my head is the animated voice.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you read current Harley Quinn, there's a huge dissonance. It doesn't match. You know,
Yeah,
so
it's true.
sometimes,
It's not the same Harley.
Well,
it's
there's no
why.
sweetness to her anymore.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
and
they really did make her like a Deadpool. I mean, she just feels like a different Harley.
That's marvelous.
Yeah. But I
guess-
don't know if I'll ever have Ryan Reynolds in my head. When
Well, I
read
think
Deadpool.
I think that's for the best. So I guess my concern is now the Killing Joke animated film has not been released yet, correct?
next week.
Next week,
It's soon.
and it's
And
getting
they're-
one night only in the.
Yeah.
It's getting one night. Do we know? Is it playing in town anywhere? for that one night only?
I'm pretty sure our coworker is going to go see it.
I guess what concerns me is the choice to stylistically shift it to the style of the animated series. I know they had they made a big to do about casting Kevin Conroy as Batman in The Killing Joke and Mark Hamill as the Joker, but tonally
It's very different.
Oh,
but
gee
they're
whiz.
probably trying to appeal to a demographic for nostalgia.
Sure.
You know, the moment
Yeah.
you said
Okay.
Kevin Conroy, a flock of your demographic appeared a little bit quicker than it might not have. So some of those issues are purely marketing.
Yeah, and they already have that system in place to produce those cartoons, right? They know those animators, those artists can produce that comic. You know, you would to do. I'm just assuming that to do a Brian Bolland The Killing Joke cartoon would take a lot longer because that's a lot more animators that need to learn how to draw in that style.
Yeah, you'd have to reteach a whole production line in Korea to do something differently or something like that. you
Yeah.
know? So, yeah.
All right. Cool. And that actually we kind of went on to another topic of who do we hear in our head when we read comics, which I think is fascinating. Maybe we'll revisit that later because I love getting ideas for future.
Yeah, give us some time to research our
Yeah.
our favorite voice artists who we don't always know those performers' names, but on occasion there are folks where you go, oh, that guy.
Yeah. It's obvious. It's easier for me to hear a voice if I know it firsthand. Like if I'm reading Transformers, I know what all the characters sound like. You know, if I'm reading a new title, I'd probably they haven't made another pop culture iteration of it. I probably wouldn't have a voice in it in my head. So anyway, that's just me. Hey guys, let's move on to. Our next topic of today, and I want to talk about comics and music. So we've talked about music representation of comics before.
We're all shifting for our notes here.
I know, I like that. We've talked about Gem and the Holograms, of course, and how they represent like the songs in the books. But I want to talk about what other comics are there that either are like biographies of musicians or portray bands on the run, as the case may be. What else is out there? Anybody?
Well, they did. There is a book called The Fifth Beatle.
Okay.
That's something that is a biography.
Is it about Brian Epstein?
Yeah, I thought I reviewed it a while back. It's that's the one I was going
Or
to.
Pete Best? Because either one of
no, it
those
was
are
Brian
considered
Epstein.
the
It's a lovely book. It's written by Vivek J. Tiwari and drawn by Andrew Robinson and Kyle Baker, and it tells it goes into the backstory of what Epstein's life was like, being gay, being a Jew, and then fronting or helping to manage, the most popular band in the universe. I think it's a fascinating story. It's a beautifully drawn book.
And then you get weird things like Archie meets Kiss,
Yes,
because Kiss has to put him.
Or the Kiss comics
I
from
say
the
him
70s,
because
yeah.
I'm talking about you.
Archie meets Ramones is on the way, I think.
Yeah.
On the way, so it's been announced, but it's not been released yet.
Or even offered.
And there's like another Josie and the Pussycats, which is not a real band, but is a real band, but not. But
See, is the Josie and the Pussycats getting the Afterlife with Archie, Sabrina? I want to have a
this
grim
is
and gritty
gonna-
Josie and the
no,
Pussycats.
I think this
oh,
is like
bummer.
Mark Waid kind of Archie,
Josie
like
and the
Pussycats
okay,
in hell.
Like the Archie
reimagined, more
Jughead.
modern.
Okay,
you know.
well, but if Wade's writing it, that could be
Well, I don't
interesting.
know
No,
if he's
it's not
writing it.
Waid.
I'm just talking
We're just
about.
stylistically the making it.
As long as he doesn't try to do a strange fruit thing with it, we'll be fine.
Ooh.
I'm just talking about.
What do you have there, Chris?
I have
Oh, yes.
allergies. The hip hop family tree by Ed Piskor. And Fantagraphics published that. They're a local publisher. And basically, there's 3 volumes in an ongoing series right now. And he divides it up by years. And 4 volumes. And basically, he's just going over all the different hip hop and rap artists over the ages, and he does it in this great kind of style that like all the covers look like 70s Marvel Comics covers, and they kind of have like this old newsprint kind of printing quality, and it's just a total history comic, which gives you the bibliography, the discography.
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 I can't say words.
Discography.
and the funky index with all the
Persepolis.
words here.
Persepolis. Thank you.
And yeah, so this is actually a really great resource too, and
It's
really,
a lovely. That
really
looks like an awesome
painstakingly
book.
put together too.
And the fourth volume, I believe, is what was coming out fairly monthly in single issue floppy form, and then they finally collected it. But the first few, I think, were just straight up graphic novels.
And that just came out like a week or two ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
Unless we
recent.
not forget one of my favorites, which is David Lasky and Frank Young's The Carter Family. Don't forget this song.
Indeed.
Which comes with a CD in the back, right? Which
Sure.
I didn't know about. Yeah, until the live show.
How could? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was. That was one of the things I was always harping on about with where that book is concerned. Did you get a disc inside? It's so cool.
For those of you who just tuning in, David Lasky was actually our guest at the Panel Jumper Live show
Chapter 2.
back in May.
That's right.
What do any other comics come with CDs that you can listen along with?
You know, I can't. I'm not sure, but I think the Jimi Hendrix graphic novel that Bill Sienkiewicz
Sienkiewicz.
did. I thought that came with a CD.
I missed that one entirely.
Yeah.
Do you remember the old Marvel things that came out with that would come with a record?
The Power Records.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was a whole
Yeah,
thing.
I had a bunch of those.
James Kolchaka, who's a very interesting indie comic creator, also released a number of CDs. And I think like one or two of them came with his books. He also does a series of like children's books, like Johnny Boo and the Dragon Puncher. But he also does some like very creepy things as well. So he had CDs. I can't recall any others really that came with any music.
I do remember having these old magazine records. I think one was like a whale song, and it came with a National Geographic.
The vinyl floppy.
Yeah. And as
Play on
a
your-
kid, I just loved playing with it.
Yeah, those are great.
Didn't really care for the whale song, but it's a cool use of the medium.
World Magazine, Ranger Rick, those kinds of things. They all had those tipped in, those vinyl floppies.
They John Muth, I think it was
John J. Muth,
John J.
yes,
Muth. He
yeah.
did an adaptation of
M, Fritz Lang's
Fritz
M,
Lang's
that had, and it was a score that he wrote, and I
Yeah.
have that.
Yes.
That's right. But I can't play it on anything because it is one of those vinyl tipped in. Yeah, it was a 4-issue. They re-released the entire. It was a 4-part perfect bound series.
Bell goes off every time we mention the name of the show.
Do I get a cookie or anything? But I never did listen to it because I never had access to a turntable when it came out. They have reprinted it the series in the last couple of years in a single hardbound edition with no soundtrack.
Oh no!
Yeah.
That's a bummer.
Okay, I don't think I might have that. I'll see if I could find it and let it to you.
Okay.
Because I thought there was a release. I have some other John J. Muth, like Sounds of Muth or something like
Right.
that.
He was quite brilliant, and he's just kind of gone off the grid. I think he did a couple of children's books, and now he's I don't think he's doing comics anymore. Because when I picked up the M, I found it used a couple of years ago. And I was curious because he did a series in the 80s with J.M. DeMatteis called Moonshadow that was watercolor and acrylic and pen and ink, and it's a very dreamy, surreal story about this boy being abducted by aliens and going to live in space and stuff like that. Do you guys remember that series at all? Okay.
Yeah. It's
Did I
always
get
in the
some of it
quarter
right?
bins.
Yeah, it is always in the quarter bins, and it's unfortunate because it was a beautiful book.
And then for like fiction things, I mean, Scott Pilgrim fits into that because he's in a band.
Oh,
And Dazzler.
Oh,
Dazzler.
hey! Yeah, that's
Yep.
right. How can we forget
And-
the Disco Dazzler?
I believe there's another kid's book called Zebrafish, and
Okay.
I think that's a bunch of kids in a band as well.
Phonogram
Yeah,
and
it's-
Wicked and Divine.
Music is magic. Phonogram.
Well, in Wicked and Divine, the new pantheon of gods are basically all the pop stars. So Beyonce is a god,
Yep.
goddess.
oh, really? Well,
Basically.
she's our queen. It only makes sense that she's a god as well.
There was also a really interesting series called 27 by Charles Soule, who's really popular these days. He's doing
Everything.
ton of everything. Yeah. And that one was basically about the idea that a certain amount of great artists, of musicians, died at the age of 27.
Jimi Hendrix, Kurt Cobain, Janis Joplin. Who am I missing?
Jim Morrison? Did he die?
Jim Morrison? Oh, yeah.
I think so.
As well.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I
that's
think
4. That's enough.
available. Yeah, there you go. I can't remember. There was like some conspiracy to it in his book, but I think that's
Did
still-
Courtney Love kill every one of those?
Oh, easy now.
That's not
Oh,
something that
there
I
is
think
a Kurt
true.
Cobain comic coming out.
There is.
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
conspiracy ridden?
It sounds like, yeah.
Is it from even a remotely reputable publisher?
Actually, kind of, yeah.
I think so.
IDW,
Yeah,
I think, is putting
it's
it
just
out.
Why?
Is it a conspiracy comic?
We can't remember the solicitation. There's just a big picture of him.
I thought I remember it being something along like that documentary that came out about the PI guy that was like
Right.
working for Courtney Love and then became like a conspiracy theorist about her and everything. I think it's based off of something like that, around that. But yeah.
Well, there were the rockography comics that were really cheaply produced back in the '90s, and they ground those out like confetti, and they had, but they were really really sloppily produced, illustrated. Do you remember these? Do you remember what they were called?
Rockology.
Rockology.
No, probably.
No, I think you might be right. Anyway, they were everywhere because they were easy sales because they would be about every pop star under the sun, and the shops where I was frequenting would order plenty and sell them all quickly because someone would come into the store that not necessarily was interested in comics or genre comics, but gosh darn it, they wanted to get a book on Sammy Hagar.
Yeah.
So the book is called "Who Killed Kurt Cobain: The Story of Buddha." Buddha? Is that what he calls it? I forget. It's his imaginary friend. So it is a work of fiction, and it recounts real life events from Cobain's life as narrated by his childhood imaginary friend. So that's what it's about.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
it's the writer artist is Nicholas Otero.
So Boda is supposed to be Cobain's imaginary friend from
Yeah,
childhood?
and so it's recounting, I guess, real life events,
Okay.
but told through this imaginary friend.
Kurt Cobain was my generation's...
And we're dropping stuff.
Was my generation's John Lennon.
Yeah, I mean, my husband saw that and just because like he is like Gen X,
Yeah.
for real. So, yeah, he was over it the moment he saw the picture.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm not too anxious to read it. Anyway, since everybody's connected and all pieces of media are easily accessible, I'm actually surprised that CDs come in comics, because you can totally just listen to whatever you want to listen to online.
Oh, I do want to note something, because you did talk about in the show notes about like multimedia, using multimedia in comics.
Yeah.
Is that part of this?
Yeah.
So Bee and Puppycat did something really cool. Bee and Puppycat is an animated series that came out with a comic through Kaboom, I believe, and
So it was animated first?
it was animated first,
Okay.
and then they do that. Like Adventure Time has their own, Clarence has their own, et cetera, et cetera. And what you could do was they did a QR code. Like every time these characters would go to a different musical box and open it up, there would be a QR code that you could scan, and it would go to YouTube, and it would play a story, or it would play like a little song, like a music box. And even one of them went to just like a really long fart.
Because it was the broken one.
Because it was it was broken and it had noxious fumes around it and stuff. But that I thought was a really cool idea. And I
Yeah.
don't see that very often in comics, but I thought, all the kids have the smartphones now too. So
I know, it's
weird,
crazy.
strange little kids with iPhones, but
Yeah.
it was a neat idea.
Yeah, it's totally neat. And with advances in AR technology these days, it's just a matter of time until you take your iPhone, you put it over the panel on your
Well,
comic
they've
book,
That's
and
already
it
done it.
comes
That's already
alive.
happening.
Marvel
actually.
has AR in their books
Yeah.
where there's a little tag and you
Yeah.
go over it. And then there's been a couple comics, like
4
giant
or 5
hardcovers that make that a big deal. That's like half the project is that they made a bunch of moving animations that went over the panel. There was that new sci-fi one from Image that Leanne really liked,
Faster Than Light.
Faster Than Light. That was a big selling point on
I think
it.
it had like tentacle monster
Tentacle
things or whatever.
monsters.
Yeah.
Okay, that is cool.
Yeah.
And then
neat.
there was another really interesting QR thing. Oh, Valiant had a bunch of covers that's a painted face of the character, and then if you put your phone over the mouth, the little mouth would appear on your phone and start talking to you from the character's voice.
Wow.
And it would have like 3 or 4 things to say.
Wow.
So they're doing little things like that, and some of them are really, really cool and inventive.
That's pretty neat.
It makes
So you
paper
like it.
important
So you
too.
could have your
Yeah,
own
indeed.
digital phone clutch cargo.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I wanna experience that. Anyway, that's great. Let's move on to book report, everybody. And this week, Cole, let's start with you. What did you read?
Well, I read DC's Scooby Apocalypse, which is part of DC's new sub.
Hanna-Barbera for adults.
Their sub. What do I want to call it?
Dark
Sub department. Their Dark Barbera.
Their imprint.
Yeah, their new. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. Chris reviewed
Future Quest?
Future Quest, which I read a couple days ago and thought was fun.
They're fun.
But the most lovely thing about that is the 8 pages of Steve Rude artwork you get. So Scooby Apocalypse. This is interesting. It's not bad. It's just not very good.
I believe when you got here today, Cole, Scott, the owner, was here. He asked you what you thought of it. And what did you tell him?
He said he just pointed to the book and he said one word, and I said meh.
And he replied, "That's probably the best review he's heard."
Yeah, it's Keith Giffen does the plot and the breakdowns, and I've always appreciated Giffen. He's not always a consistent writer. J.M. DeMatteis does the dialogue, and J.M. DeMatteis is one of my favorite, comic book navel-gazing superhero storytellers. So, he's written some of the best navel-gazing superhero stories of the '90s. The Martian Manhunter, and that's J.M. DeMatteis.
What does navel gazing mean?
Just contemplating spirituality, contemplating the universe, contemplating
looking inward.
Looking inward to the point where you come out the other side.
You're looking down at your belly button.
Just
you're thinking. You're
just
so
ruthlessly meditative.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
got it.
You've never heard the term navel gazing before?
No.
Read a book.
Geez.
I do. They're called picture books.
It's not obvious what it
do it
means
a lot.
by the
Okay,
phrase.
that's all right, and it's drawn by Howard Porter. So this is this is an opportunity that I think that these folks here at DC kind of missed because with a title like Scooby Apocalypse, you're kind of getting set up like it could be. Is it going to be Ghostbusters fun? Is it going to be Lovecraftian horror? Well, speckled with our beloved characters from childhood.
Is it Afterlife with Scooby?
Is it Afterlife with Scooby, which is precisely where I was going next. Thank you for reading my mind, Ben Lawrence. Because we know that comic book writers can be inspired to tell those kind of stories with these beloved characters. Velma and Shaggy and Daphne and Fred, they're all cast in these modern contexts, but they waste a lot of time giving you their backstories. And, in 1969, when the original Scooby-Doo came out, one of the things that was fascinating about those characters and all the Hanna-Barbera characters is that they never bother with that stuff.
No.
It was right into the action. It was right into the goofiness.
Why was Speedbuggy an anthropomorphic car? How did he get
Didn't
his
matter.
voice?
Who
Didn't
cares?
matter.
Let's
Exactly.
go have fun.
Okay, I have a question about
right.
this, and it's a very important question. Is Scrappy-Doo in it?
Oh.
That could happen in all eventuality. And when you're dealing with a cybernetic, militarized Scooby-Doo and the dog-whispering, hipster Shaggy, anything is possible.
Looking for a simple
Anything.
yes or no, dude.
You're not going to get that. How long have you known me?
I want him to show up and them to go, quick, it's a bomb, and then toss him.
Cross the streams.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be great.
And then he's like, no, I'm not.
Yeah, and I was reading this.
I'm sorry, I'm so obnoxious.
I was reading this trying to find some type of connection to nostalgia and something that will compel me to read the book, and I got none of that. Sadly, it's you've read this story before. There's nothing inspired or groundbreaking about it, and it's too bad because I think there's a great potential to do some really funky things with it. The last, they actually don't even the story of the first issue doesn't even take up the whole first issue. You've got a backup story telling the backstory of Shaggy and Scooby, but the last page of the primary story ends on a bunch of monsters essentially swiped from our beloved Universal monsters. There's Wolfman, there's King Kong, and there's Creature from the Black Lagoon.
But
so.
one of them is really Old Man Jenkins, right?
Oh, and that's no, he's not there because we don't get that little button on the end of this story.
And they're actually monsters, right?
There are monsters because it's the apocalypse.
Well, see, the interesting thing about the Scooby-Doo cartoon was that there were two sort of phases, right? There was the original cartoon, and all the monsters were just old dudes wearing masks who wanted kids to stay out of
I could have gotten away with it too if it weren't for your lousy kids.
But if you remember this in the Scrappy-Doo era, when it was just Daphne and Shaggy and Scooby and Scrappy, the monsters were real, and I thought that was a strange departure from the world that they'd set up.
I just like that we could say Scooby Phase 1, Scooby Phase 2. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I was getting see, I'm looking at I'm always my old saw. It's always the source material. And then I was like looking at Wikipedia, going, there have been 12 Scooby-Doo TV series and over 30 animated films. So that old saw of mine is really, really pointless. So
but what if the monsters take off their masks and there's more monsters under there?
That would be intriguing.
Monsterception?
Yes, it's Monsterception. That's the apocalypse.
What if there takes off his mask and he's an old dude?
What I was reading here was not inspiring to me, and that's unfortunate because there's a lot of great source material out there to pull from. I was thinking, I've been reading the Fortean Times for over 30 years, and there are creepy oddball stories in those that you could plug into a Scooby-Doo context, regardless of what period you're pulling the Scooby-Doo story from. I guess that, once again, Afterlife with Archie has spoiled my expectations, and Scooby Apocalypse, meh.
So, yes, go ahead.
Oh, old man takes off his mask and he's a monster.
Now
sorry,
That's actually what I meant to say.
Okay, yes,
I got it backwards.
No, what I really
and?
want now is if, like, the Frankenstein takes off his mask and he's a Dracula, and he's just like, I just wanted to do something different.
Yeah, see, there you go. All right.
Yes, and?
I think the lesson we're learning here today is if you want to read Scooby Apocalypse, read Afterlife with Archie instead.
Or Sabrina.
Or just come to us and we'll write a script for you.
All right. Thanks, Cole. Chris, what about you?
So much rebirth, so little time. I'll do Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. Rebirth, number 1, which is not actual number 1. It's like number 0. It's by Venditti and Van Sciver. And Venditti, I like a lot of his work over at Valiant. I didn't like a lot of his New 52 work, but I think there's some shenanigans going in editorial there. And Van Sciver, I do really like his stuff when it's Green Lantern attached, because he makes cool aliens. And this is basically them cleaning up from the last year of New 52, where Hal Jordan was on the run, and he got rid of the ring, but he had a power gauntlet that harnessed the green energy of the rings, and he basically was like the universe's number 1 war criminal or something. And he basically took like all the blame for everything bad that ever happened to the Corps, even though nobody deserved to. And he's becoming like a creature of pure energy again. And he has to like will himself into existence. And it's basically a lot of recap. It's kind of telling you where all the different Lantern characters are. Sinestro has War World, which is like taken the place of Oa and is like the center of the universe now. And the Sinestro Corps is in charge of peace and order in the universe through fear. And it does actually a pretty good job of setting up like the next chapter. And it looks great. And what's interesting for me is it hits a really neat, like, a little piece of mythology I actually like being added, which is Hal Jordan is the only person that's not one of like the Guardians of the Universe to
Don't mix up your publishers, dude. That's a cardinal sin there, brother.
He it forged his own ring out of sheer willpower, and so he's going to be the one to remake the Green Lantern Corps. So he's like the new torchbearer. I like that as an idea. So there's a lot of really good potential there. I don't think Van Sciver is going to be the regular artist. He never is. But it is a very good, just like, this is what our focus will be for the next
Until the
year
next
or so.
reboot.
Until the next reboot.
Yeah.
But it looks great. Was fun. Not much happened.
So I'm sorry, I was fiddling with my phone. No Parallax, no Yellow Flaw.
Parallax is still a part of the story. I bet you he's still part of like the lantern that Hal just forged or something.
Okay.
Parallax is actually the power battery to Warworld, which is what Sinestro controls
Got it.
everything
Okay.
from. And it looks like they're gonna do some interesting stuff with Parallax. So I like all the Sinestro stuff. That's one of the new 52 titles I actually really liked Throughout the Run because it seemed to run separate from New 52 continuity. It didn't, but it read like it did because it was well written. And I just like Sinestro because he's a very well textured villain with interesting background history that makes you kind of like, you're still horrible, but I get why you do what you did. So yeah, it's actually pretty good start point.
Cool.
Excellent.
All right, Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. Is that the official title, or is it just Green Lantern?
It's Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps.
All righty.
There is
cool.
a Green Lanterns
Yep.
series as well.
Which focuses on Earth. This is the space title.
Gotcha.
That's what I tend to prefer.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. Nicole, what about you?
I read Black Mask's Kim and Kim. And there's a lot of people with hyphen names. The writer is Mags Visaggio. And Pencils and Inks is Ava Cabrera and a whole bunch of other wonderful people doing colors and letters and edits and all kinds of things. Katie Rex is actually she's an editor and she's a Valkyrie. So there's a bunch of Valkyries working for Black Mask. Valkyries are women who work in comic book shops. We're a network of females.
I
on the
know those
internet.
things.
If you
Yeah.
listen to the Perfect Bound podcast,
It was like the first
issue 1.
Yes, issue 1. So
We
in case
discussed
you're
it.
just tuning in,
Well, you were looking at me like, you need to be educated, young man.
it's all about you, Cole.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, I know. It's such a relief. Such a relief.
It's nice to get that validation. Isn't it?
It is. Keep going. I'm sorry.
So it's got really cute art style, which I dig. It's got really vibrant colors. I love it. It's 2 bounty hunters who are not able to get paying gigs. They got shafted out of their first one. They find out that there's like this really big bounty. So they start going after this guy who seems to have tentacles and is kind of evil. And one of the Kims is a trans woman, and she mentions it in here. And she has a falling out with her father, who I guess also runs this big bounty hunting place. And she's like, well, I'm not going to go and work for him. Like, I won't do that because, we're at odds and whatever. But it's a lot of fun, and there's some great action in it. There's some interesting characters. It's all space. It's all sci-fi. But it doesn't always feel that way. It's like you're on a planet, and they're talking about like the planet doesn't always look like this, just so you know. Like there's just interesting tidbits like that. Just like, by the way, it's not all like that. It's like, okay, but they're cute characters, and it's totally my kind of jam. I'm really excited for a lot of stuff that Black Mask is coming out with this year. I wish it would be faster, but I'm very glad that Kim and Kim is one of the earlier ones, and I'm really curious to keep reading it and see how it goes. It was a really good first issue. Established a lot of things about the characters and also gave you, something to hold on to as far as plot. So, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I like the cover art, too.
Yeah, it's beautiful. That cover art is by... Who's it by? Tess Fowler. Who is
Do I know her?
Well, I'm excited because she's Rat Queen's girl,
Right.
but I don't know if she's going to be much anymore. But anyway, I like her. She's a great artist.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Kim and Kim. Thanks, Nicole. All right. Well, that's Book Report, and that's our show. And coming up is quiz time. But before we go, I want to tell you that the Perfect Bound podcast is brought to you by the Panel Jumper. See everything Nicole Hornaday and I do at thepaneljumper.com, and by the Comics Dungeon here at 319 Northeast 45th Street in beautiful downtown Wallingford. You can see the beautiful store behind us here. There's more over there you can't see. Or 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at comicsdungeon.com. Send us an email. Do we get anything wrong? Do you want us to talk about something? Tell us. Validate Cole because he likes that at perfectboundpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can subscribe to us at perfectboundpodcast.com on iTunes or however you get your podcasts. And there are a lot of ways to get podcasts these days.
Yeah, you can ingest them. You can, take them.
Shoot them right
internally.
into your brain.
That's
All right.
Oh man, that would make
Soon enough, in a couple
so
years.
much
Indeed.
easier.
They're
Now-
highly contagious.
Now it's quiz time, and today, get your quiz hats on, everybody. And today our questions are coming to us from Mr. Cole Hornaday. Lay it on us, Cole.
So the title of this week's quiz time is Just Say the Word. These questions are tied to the theme of superheroes and the transformational language upon which they rely. So, obviously, there's going to be some gimmies here. And Chris, I love you, but please let me finish a freaking sentence. Firstly, when young Billy Batson utters this phrase, magical lightning from the gods transforms him into that big red cheese Captain Marvel. What is the magic word? Why, yes, Chris, you're right. It is Shazam. Now, as you know, Shazam is an acronym for the names of 5 gods. Can you name those 5 gods, dear brother Chris?
Let's see. Samson, Hercules, Atlas, Zeus, and not Hermes. Feet.
Aragorn.
Heel.
Achilles.
There you go.
And S is the last Shazam.
M.
I'm tired.
It is late.
Mercury. Yep, you got it. Thank you. Captain Marvel was originally published by Fawcett Comics from 1939 to 1953, and then as Shazam, a DC Comics from 1972 to the present. Thank you for letting me be a jerk to you. I always appreciate that. In the 1950s, a small British publisher, L. Miller and Son, began publishing a very thinly veiled copy of Captain Marvel called Marvel Man, later renamed Miracle Man thanks to the objections on the part of Marvel Comics' legal department. What was the magic word freelance reporter Mike Moran uttered to make his miraculous transformation?
Kamota.
Excellent. Kamota only spelled with a K. It is supposed to be atomic spelled backwards, and that just never made any sense to me. Alan Moore's successful reboot of this character began in UK's Warrior magazine in 1982. It led to an ongoing series from Eclipse Comics in 1985 that was ultimately penned by Neil Gaiman. Following Eclipse's filing for bankruptcy in 1994, Todd McFarlane got his clutches on the character, and it turned into a big legal mess, and there's not enough air in this comic book store to
had
continue.
a lot of big names behind it.
Yeah. He erroneously bought the whole stock of characters from Eclipse, assuming that Miracle Man was part of the package, and that character belonged to him, and he incorporated that character along with the Heap and all those other characters into his Spawn verse. And he was wrong. And Neil Gaiman took him to court over it and won.
Awesome. All right.
So DC's John L. Thunder possesses a genie-like creature known as a Thunderbolt, though his friends call him Iz, that resides inside his magic ink pen. What was the phrase Johnny Thunder utters to free his magically electrified pal?
Say you?
Excellent. Say you. Or actually,
say me,
or
say forever.
but it's spelled, but it's actually like
CIEU or
right,
something like
right.
that.
Johnny Thunder first appeared in Flash Comics #1 in 1940. Now, in 1975, Filmation paired its own original live-action female-centered superhero TV series with Shazam in its Saturday morning lineup. What was the phrase high school science teacher Andrea Thomas uttered upon lifting the Tutmoose amulet from within her blouse?
ISIS?
Almighty Isis.
Yeah, I love that show. She was so hot.
Yeah, William.
Yeah. The Secrets of Isis ran on Saturday morning from 1975 to 1977 and began its syndication in 1978 and will run ad nauseum until the goddess sees fit to return to this dimension.
You can find it on YouTube.
No, I want the goddess to come back to our dimension. And finally, once upon a time in the land of Camelot, Merlin the magician bound a demon to a loyal knight of the Round Table, rendering that knight immortal, but eternally cursed. What was the phrase demonologist Jason Blood utters to swap places with his damned counterpart?
Gone, form of man, something, Etrigan.
Rise the demon Etrigan.
Yes,
wow.
that's what I said.
The demon was created by Jack Kirby for DC Comics in 1972 when sales for his Fourth World books hit the fan and did not make the numbers the publisher had anticipated. And that is quiz time. Thank you.
By the power of Grayskull, Cole, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
All right, well, that's quiz time.
Cringer.
That's our show. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.